what we're talking about today, if you're just joining us, we are going to talk about what your dough should look like if you're making sourdough, what to do, like some tips for as you're mixing your dough up, a few things that you can do to ensure that you're not unintentionally making it sticky, and then how to fix it. How to fix it if it's too sticky, because here's what I know. You can read all sorts of different stuff online about sourdough, and you can find all sorts of people who are truly masters at sourdough. I am a master at making sourdough work in our everyday life. And that is my goal all the time, because we run our own business. I work full time. We have kids. We have family life, fun. We want to go live life. I love, love, love filling our table with delicious, good, true, real food. But and I can't be in the kitchen all of the time. And so my goal is to help you take all of the mystery out of sourdough, realize you can break almost all of the rules, and you can still make really delicious, amazing bread. So the first thing, which I have some dough already made, and I do want you to put your questions and stuff into the comments, because I will get to those after we go through these few steps. Then we're just going to answer questions, because I'm here to cheer you on. And if you have a question I don't answer, I want to make sure we get to it. So we're not mixing up dough today, so I'm going to give you a couple tips, and we're going to point to a couple videos you can watch, okay? The first thing that I want you to think about when you are mixing up your dough is I want you to make sure that when you go to mix up your dough, you mix up the starter, the water, and the flour together, and then you just take your salt, the salt that we love to use. We love this pink Himalayan salt. You just sprinkle the salt over the top of the dough, and it's going to rest for 30 to 40-ish minutes. That's the fermentillase stage. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you add your first put all of those, the starter, the water, and the flour together, if you add your salt in, salt slows down the ability of the flour to absorb moisture. So it basically, it's making the flour not absorb the moisture that you put into that bowl. Why is that a big deal? If the flour can't absorb the moisture, it's going to make your dough sticky. And bonus, when you leave the salt out and you allow that flour and water and starter to just rest together, it allows that flour to get hydrated better, but it also gives you better flavor, better texture, better rise. So that's my first tip. Make sure that you are not mixing your salt in right away. And we have a video all about this. Shelly, our YouTube admin, is down in the comments. She'll throw the video in there. It's all about, I'm trying to remember the title of the video, but it basically is like why you don't put the salt in right away. And it talks a little bit more about why. Okay, that's my first tip. Make sure you're not mixing the salt in right away. Second tip is sourdough starter is so capable of creating really soft, beautiful dough without you massacring it. So what I mean by that, and there's actually a reel, and hopefully Shelly can go find it and put that down in the comments. It shows the process of the dough resting, and in between each stretch and fold, you can kind of see how the dough goes from shaggy dough initially to this really soft, fluffy dough at the end of that final stretch and fold. So why am I saying this? It's because if you are aggressively kneading, mixing, like trying to work with your dough too much when you first mix it up, you're going to make it sticky and gummy. The sourdough starter wants you to get it incorporated. Your dough is going to look shaggy. You're going to sprinkle your salt over the top. You're going to let it rest. Then you're gonna do your first stretch and fold. It's still gonna look a little bit shaggy after the first stretch and fold. Then by the time you get to the second stretch and fold, it's gonna start looking more like dough. You gotta go find this reel or the short on here and watch it, because it's so cool to see what happens over that 2-hour period where you're doing those stretch and folds every 30-ish minutes. The sourdough starter is working its way through the dough. The flour is getting hydrated, and it goes from shaggy dough to soft, fluffy dough by the time you get to that fourth stretch and fold. Now, I want you to hear this, okay? If you get to the third stretch and fold and your dough is so sticky, you can barely work with it. It's like getting stuck all over your hands. I want you to add 25 grams more of whatever the flour is that you're using. Stretch and fold that in. If it's still really, really sticky, do 25 grams more flour, stretch and fold that in, and then let it rest. Most of the time, 25 to 50 grams of flour will fix a batch of dough if it's like a double batch of the everyday dough. Now, every recipe is different. I've not tried every single recipe that is out there on the internet. I encourage you to try our everyday dough recipe, and Shelly will put that down into the comments as well, because that's the recipe that I'm talking about when I'm saying it should do these things. But remember, every recipe is different. Every kitchen climate is different. Your kitchen, even if you lived right next door to me, is going to be different than my kitchen. We have a wood stove that we use primarily to heat our house, and it really dries our house out. It dries the dough out. It dries everything out more than if you had just electric heater or whatever. So just know you are allowed to add more flour if your dough is too sticky. And definitely by that third stretch and fold. If you get into that third stretch and fold and you can't work with your dough, add more flour, because then that flour has time. Now remember, that flour has to get hydrated too. Don't worry that the salt is already mixed in. The bulk of your flour is in there, and it's gotten to do all of its beautiful work. So first tip is don't add your salt right away. Second tip is don't overwork your dough. If you're going to use your KitchenAid or like a stand mixer, like ours is back in the corner over here, you can use that to mix up your sourdough dough, especially if you're doing a huge batch of dough. I love using that when I do the quadruple batch of dough. I have the 8-quart stand mixer, and a quadruple batch fits into it, but no more than that. Like quadruple batch is like maxing it out. So don't overmix it. And then the third thing is add more flour. Now, okay, sip of coffee here. I have some dough that I made, let's see, over a week ago. It's been sitting in the fridge because I love to make these big batches of dough and pull off the amount that we need for whatever we want to make. So last Friday, I made pizza with it, and you can see it still has some really great air bubbles in it, but it is getting sticky. It's very damp. It's not really sticking to my hands too much, but I can tell that it is, it's losing its structure. So if I were to try to shape a loaf with this, it would just fall flat. So that's a sign if you are trying to shape a loaf and it's just falling flat and it won't hold its shape, that's a sign that you need more flour, because your flour is the food to feed your sourdough starter. That wild yeast, that is your sourdough starter is just this wild yeast. And we're trying to give it enough food so that it gets strong. And what it does when it gets strong is it holds the dough together, it holds its shape. And then when it goes into the oven, it's like, poof, you have that massive, beautiful rise. If your sourdough starter that is in your dough is hungry, it doesn't have enough flour and it has too much moisture, it's going to be too heavy and it's not going to hold its shape. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add this into my bowl because I want to measure, because I think this is about 800 grams. And that's what I want to work with so that I can show you how I fix it. Because I know, and so I'm making sure my scale says grams. I know lots and lots of people say once your dough is overproofed, there's really nothing you can do with it. That's not true. That's not true. You can fix it. Okay, this is actually 900 grams, so I'm going to take some out and get us a little bit closer to where we want to be. Okay, here we go. So here's my dough. It's in the bowl. It's just a little bit, like you can see, if it's moving around your bowl like that, it's not going to want to hold its shape when you go to work with it. And remember, this dough is cold. It's been in the fridge. And typically when your dough is cold, it holds its shape even better because it's all like, it's cold. It's not warm and fluffed up as much. So if your dough is doing this, where it's just like, it's sticky, sad, it's not holding its shape, I want you to put it on the scale, and I'm going to add 25 grams of flour to it. So I'm going to tear my scale out. I'm going to add 25 grams of flour because I want to start with that. I want to see, will that be what it can absorb? So here's my dough. I'm going to just do this is like stretch and fold / I'm going to say kneading. So we want to essentially get that flour that we just added on top of that dough incorporated into the dough. Now, here's the thing. When you do this, when you revive some dough and you add flour into it, it's going to need to go back into the fridge and proof again. Maybe not overnight, but I would give it at least 4 or 5 hours because we want this flour to get worked into the dough. We want the sourdough starter to be able to find it. So that wild sourdough yeast that's in your dough, we want it to find this flour so that it can begin to munch on it and get stronger, and it then starts to help that dough rise better and it won't be as sticky. Now, I can feel that it has absorbed almost all of the flour in the bowl and it's still a little bit sticky. So I'm going to put it back on my scale and I'm going to add a little bit more flour. Let's do another 10 grams. So now we would be at 35 grams. Here's why I'm measuring it. Is because if I had just made this dough, let's say I made it yesterday and I had put it into the fridge and I went to go work with it, the next day, your dough should not be sticky. It should not have lost its shape. It should be fluffing and starting to rise even though it's in the fridge, and you should be able to work with it. So if you go to take it out that next day after it has been proofing overnight in the fridge and it's very sticky, that's your sign that from the very beginning when you mix your dough up, you want to add however much. Like, so I added 35 grams more flour today. That's how much I would add to my recipe when I very first mix it up so that I don't have to do this again. Now, look at this dough. Look at how nice and soft it is. Now, if I go to shape it, it's not going to completely fall apart. It's going to hold its shape. So instead of just letting it proof in my bowl, which let's make some room here, because we know, okay, this needs to proof again overnight because we want that flour to really get incorporated. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shape it right now. And I'm just doing a traditional, we're going to do the batard or the like oval loaf. I'm shaping it for that oval loaf. And I have my, whoops, I should have got this ready first. Whoopsies, whoopsies. Okay, I have my little basket that it's going to proof in. And I have my loaf shaped. And into the basket it goes. I'm going to cover this really well. I'm going to stick it into the fridge. And then tomorrow, all I have to do is turn the oven on, turn this out, score it, and it's ready to bake. So if you have to do any reviving on your dough, it's gotten sticky and you want to revive it, get it shaped into the basket or the loaf pan or whatever it is you're going to make. Maybe you're making baguettes. Put it into the fridge, cover it really well. Once it's dough, you want it covered really well. So here's the rule. If it's sourdough starter that you're feeding, the lid needs to be loose. If it's dough that you've already mixed up, the lid is airtight so that your dough doesn't dry out. Let me wash my hands off really quick, and then I'm gonna go through and let's find some of the questions so that we can answer. Maybe if you guys have been having some trouble with your dough, let's dive into that. Okay, now I can touch my phone because all the flour's off my hands. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up and let's see what other questions. Okay, lots of people are saying that they have sticky dough. That it's not, like, I just want you to know you're not alone. Sticky dough is this really, really normal issue because, like I already said, every kitchen is different, every climate is different. And here's the crazy thing. This is the cool thing about sourdough yeast is that as the weather changes through the different seasons, how much flour you use, how fast your dough will proof, it all is affected by the weather. And so this is why I want you to feel the freedom that if you're like, oh, it's real sticky, I can't really work with it, add more flour. Because as the weather changes through the different seasons, you're going to then start noticing, oh, my dough is a little different today. Oh, my sourdough starter rose more. So, okay, let's see. Next question. Oh yes. Okay. Other people are saying, thank you so much for doing sourdough that fits into everyday life. That's what I'm here for, guys. So, I have a new recipe that I've been working on for hamburger buns because so many of you asked, do you have a hamburger bun recipe? And I had not had time to fiddle around with a recipe yet to get it so that it was easy. I had found all these really beautiful, I mean, there's so many beautiful recipes online. And I would say that these master bakers would be ashamed at how I basically break all of the rules. But what we have decided is the best hamburger bun or the best bread we could ever make is the recipe that I actually make because it works in our life, not the master's like you need to be a French master baker or something, because that doesn't work for us. That's not what our life is. So I'm here to make it easy and manageable and fun. Okay, question. Oh, yay. Okay, Brenda said, my best ever sourdough bread that I cooked yesterday. I used your method. Oh, and she made it in the air fryer in a roaster bag. That's so cool. Okay, so if you have an air fryer and a roaster bag, try to make your bread in that. That's awesome. You know, our oven, we got this new a year, 2 years ago, and it has an air fry mode. And that is the baking mode that I use when I make our pizzas, when I do them in here. And honestly, it makes the pizzas like the crust is very, it's crunchy, but not thick crunchy. It's just like really crunchy, but then the inside is really soft. So good. So if you have an air fryer, you got to try it. Okay, let's see. Next question. Okay, this one is it's my first time to bake and it feels like I failed. Hey, guess what? We're allowed to fail. When have you ever done anything the first time and been like, wow, that was perfect? Okay, you mixed up 100 grams of starter, 230 grams of water, 350 flour. My dough's sticky. It won't form. What's wrong? I let it rest before adding the salt. Okay, so your recipe that you're using is slightly different than the one that I use, but I would say that you need more flour. Just start there. Add 25 to 50 grams more flour, work it in, and see how your dough is feeling. The recipe, I'm like, of course I can't remember it off the top of my head. I do, like if I was going to do a single loaf, it would be 150 grams of starter, 300 grams of water, 600 grams of flour. Now, I love using this all-purpose organic unbleached flour. And I can buy big bags of this from our local Costco. This all-purpose flour, this one right here, is not comparable to every all-purpose flour. So if you can't find this like organic, all-purpose, really good flour, this one has 11.5% protein. So if you're looking at the protein levels, which the reason why people talk about the protein levels in flour is that the more protein that a flour has, the more food it's giving to the wild yeast. It's kind of like our bodies. We need protein. The wild yeast, it needs protein. When a flour has very low levels of protein, it's not going to give that wild yeast the same like amount of strength and energy to rise. So I love, love, love this flour. If you can't find a really good all-purpose flour, then get a bread flour. Bread flour is amazing. It will give you really nice soft loaves. If you're wanting to go whole wheat flour, then that's when you really have to start playing with the flour measurements, because any kind of whole grain flour, like whole wheat, spelt, rye, those flours, you don't need as much flour as if you were going to use bread flour or all-purpose. So if you're using our everyday dough recipe, start with 100 grams less flour if you're going to go with whole wheat or rye, spelt, any of those, or like you're milling your own flour. Those flours are hardier and they absorb more moisture. And so what you can then play with your recipe a little bit, because when you get to that third stretch and fold, if it's kind of sticky, tacky, add just a little bit more flour in. And lots of people like to do a mix, like whole wheat flour and some all-purpose, or whole wheat and a little bit of bread flour, so that you're giving your bread a little bit more lightness, but you're still getting that hearty nuttiness. Okay. And okay, I just want to go back to this. I just think, okay, Pauline, yes, it's Pauline. Bravo, your first time baking with sourdough stuff. It's okay to fail. I still make stuff that I'm like, wow, that did not turn out very good. But the more that you bake, the more you recognize, oh, this dough feels really nice, or that got a really good tension when I shaped that loaf. Or when you take a loaf of bread out of the oven, you can see, you're like, oh, interesting. This dough must have been stickier. It didn't rise as much, or this dough sat in the fridge longer. Basically, it's like anything. The more that you do it, the more you understand the process and you understand what's happening with your dough. And so it's so good to practice. Every time you bake a loaf is practice, and bonus, you can eat it. That's nice. Okay. Next question. My grandson has become a sourdough expert and his family thanks you. He's 14 and loves to cook. That is so awesome. That makes me so happy. I'm so glad. We are so glad to be here cheering you guys on. Okay, next question. Watching from our beautiful state of Washington. Hello, neighbor in Washington. We live near Seattle. I'll give you a little peek outside right now. It is a very, well, maybe I can. Look at this. It's a very normal Seattle day where it looks gray. It'll be gray most of the day, and it's raining. That's a pretty normal winter day for us here. Okay. And thank you, Joy. She's saying, I have learned so much from you. I keep learning more. I'm so glad. Okay, Amy's saying, I wish I could come and attend one of your freedom dinners. Okay, if you're brand new to being here at Cider Press Lane with us, our freedom dinners are these really most amazing, beautiful dinners. They are put on by our community. We open our orchard. We ask people to come volunteer. We host the dinner, but the dinners honestly happen because our community comes and makes them possible. So everybody that works at them as a volunteer, everything we serve is donated. So when people purchase a seat at the table, they're actually giving a donation directly to Atlas Free. And so these dinners fight human trafficking and sex slavery. Years ago, and this is the little short version of how we became Cider Press Lane as a business. Years ago, we were listening to a friend of ours share about the nonprofit that he had started called Atlas Free. And when I left that gathering, I thought, oh my goodness, there is terrible evil happening in the world. and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's I think just such a normal thought that we have, that I can't make a difference. But I had this crazy idea. What if we host dinner? Let's just do the thing we love to do, which is make good food and invite friends over. And we hosted our first dinner about 11 or 12 years ago. 7 friends came, and the rest is history. You'll have to come. There's a whole page on our website all about the freedom dinners if you want to learn more about them. There's some videos on our channel that show you a glimpse into the freedom dinners. And yes, if you can ever make it to our area, you are invited to come and join us at one of them. You don't have to be local. We have friends fly in and join us from all over. And so you're invited. Just know you are invited. And guess what? Anybody can host a freedom dinner. It's not just for us. It's not just for our orchard. And there's lots of goodness about that too on our website. So, okay, next question. Okay, Mary's saying, my dough is always wet and I don't know why. Mary, I bet your climate, your kitchen needs more flour. And I give you permission. Add more flour. This is just like, okay, who bakes cookies? Anybody like to bake cookies? The rule in our house is you always bake a test cookie. Anytime you mix up dough, you always make a test cookie. Why? Because sometimes you make that test cookie and it is flat as a pancake and you're like, ooh, I don't want my cookies to be flat as a pancake. What do you do to fix it? You add a little bit more flour. This is where sourdough baking is like the rest of the world of baking. If your dough is too sticky, if it's not holding shape, if your bread is coming out flat and gummy, add more flour to your dough. I give you permission. You get to change the recipe a little bit. Okay, Rachel's saying, I need a good sourdough bread recipe. Great, come hang out with us. We have a whole video all about how to mix up your everyday dough. You can mix up more than 1 loaf's worth of dough in a day. So what I do is typically on Mondays, well, I should say this, typically on Sunday nights, I feed a very large bowl of sourdough starter. So on Monday morning, I can mix up a big batch of dough, enough for a couple loaves that week and to make pizza on Friday. Then all of that dough goes into my these are the 6-quart Cambro containers. This fits that batch of 4 loaves of dough. It goes into this container. It goes into the fridge. And then it sits in there and it's ready for me to bake whenever I want, which is how we have fresh bread multiple times through the week, and we make homemade pizza. It's because I took the time to just make a big batch of dough the beginning of the week, and the video shows you how to do that. Okay, next question. Do you have to use a cast iron loaf pan for your sandwich loaf? No. You can use any loaf pan you have. You could use metal, you could use glass. The only thing about using glass or even ceramic is I really like to proof our loaves in the fridge in the pan. So I shape it, it goes into the loaf pan, and then I put it into the fridge. And then when it's time to bake, I just turn the oven on. As soon as the oven is preheated, I take that loaf pan out, score it, put it into the oven. And so I've not tested taking a glass or a ceramic pan straight from the fridge straight into the oven. I don't know if the change in temperature would do something to it. So that's a little bit of an experiment. So I guess I would probably suggest, if you're going to proof yours the way I proof mine, that you use a metal or a cast iron pan. But a metal pan works great. I've done lots of loaves in our metal pans. And there's a whole video all about how to make a sandwich loaf. You can come and make it with me. Okay, next question. Once you put the dough in the fridge, how many hours before you can bake with it? Okay, so here's the dough that we did. I have a little bit of some plastic wrap that I had left over. I put over it. So I'm making sure it's nice and airtight. If no air is going to get in there and make this hard. I would say to let it proof for at least 4 hours. If you can let it proof until the next day, or even like, let's say you did this in the morning and then you let it proof until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it had like a good 8 hours. The longer it can sit in there, the better, because it just allows that wild yeast to find that fresh flour that you put into it and give it a chance to munch on it and get stronger. But I know that you're like, I don't always want to wait another whole day. I get that. So I would say give it at least 4 hours once you have incorporated new flour into it, and then you can bake it and it'll be delicious. And I think this week, I think tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the video that we did all about same day baking is going to go live. And it basically shows you that, yes, you can mix up dough and make a loaf all in the same day. It's possible. I still think you get the very best rise when it can proof overnight, but it is possible, and we give you that recipe in that video. But if you have just incorporated more flour into your dough, you've shaped it, it's in a loaf pan or it's in your Banneton basket, give it at least 4 hours in the fridge. Don't proof this on your counter. Here's why I suggest that you use the fridge to proof your dough. It does need a little bit more time when it cold proofs, but you are going to get the best texture, the best rise, and the best crust. Cold proofing makes it so that when it goes from the cold fridge into the oven, it has all of this extra moisture from that change in temperature, and it just makes the bread better. There's actually a whole video all about why I cold proof our loaves, and it shows you the difference between exact same dough that I proofed on the counter as opposed to the one that I cold proofed in the fridge, and you can see them side by side. It was the exact same dough, I just proofed it different. The cold proofed loaves always get better rise, better texture. So you'll have to go watch that video because it'll explain a little bit more. Okay, another one just says, thank you, my dough has become really sticky and I don't know why. The weather could be changing. Your sourdough starter might have been just a little bit stickier. There's a lot of different variables, but you are allowed to add more flour. So just throw more flour in there. Okay, another question. If you have a starter, do you have to add 1 to 1 to 1 in a new jar to keep it growing? No. Okay, the only time that I feed any sourdough starter is when I'm going to bake, and I have some really good videos on that. So you can actually forget about your starter all of the time until you're like, ooh, I want to mix up some dough this week. That's when you're going to take a portion of your starter out of the fridge. So I keep my starter in the fridge. It lives in there all the time. All I ever do is take a portion of that starter out, feed that portion. And then if the amount of starter that I have in the fridge, which I'll show you mine right now, I have not added much new to it lately. And so it's got some good stuff happening and I'm letting it. Okay, so my starter is getting a little bit of hooch. That's hooch right there on the top, that liquid. That liquid happens because for the last, month, I have not added any discard or extra fed starter. Like when you feed your starter, so you're gonna bake something, it's good to have a little bit extra, like 10, 15 grams extra, because that goes back into your main starter jar that lives in the fridge. There's video all about this because I know that is so confusing for people. And so we did several videos to help explain it. But that's how I keep my starter jar fed, happy, revived, strong. Because I've had so much starter. Oh, here comes Maddie girl. She's coming through the kitchen. Because I have had so much extra starter in the fridge, I didn't want to have extra to put back in here. I didn't need to keep replenishing it. So because I have not been replenishing it, it starts to go more dormant. And this hooch is its sign. It's telling you, I'm kind of hungry. Hello, give me some food. But I don't ever feed this jar directly. It only ever gets food by me putting some of my discard back in there. And I'm gonna make sure Shelly will find the video and she'll put it down in the comments. And we'll make sure if you're watching this video after the live, click down into the description. That's where all of the videos that I mentioned, they're all gonna be down in the description so that you can go and watch those too. We actually have a full sourdough playlist on our channel. So if you are like, I cannot get this figured out, click on over to our sourdough playlist. Come hang out with us. We talk through all of this stuff to just take the mystery away. So, okay, open it quick, Maddie. It's loud. She has a package. Okay, so to answer your question, you don't have to feed your starter a 1-1-1. Oh, you can just take that out of there, sweetie. You don't have to feed it a 1-1-1 ratio. The reason why you would do that 1-1-1 ratio is because you want your starter to rise really fast. Doing that smaller ratio, let's say you need 150 grams of fed starter, you would do 50 grams of starter from your fridge, 50 grams of room temperature water, 50 grams of flour. Feeding your starter like that allows it to hit its highest rise in about 4 hours. So that's why you would do a 1-1-1 ratio. That's one of the reasons, because you want it to hit its highest rise really fast as possible. Now, the other reason I do that smaller ratio is, okay, in a couple weeks, I'm going to take some starter out of this jar and it's really dormant. And so another reason why I would do that smaller ratio is because I want to only take 20 grams out of this jar, and I'm going to do 20 grams of this cold starter that's very, very dormant, 20 grams of water, 20 grams of flour, and I'm going to repeat that multiple times, that feeding. There's a video about this. We'll throw it down into the comments, all about how to get your starter to wake up. What if your starter's not rising? That's when you'd want to do those smaller ratios. Number one, because you don't want to be wasting tons of flour, and you don't need to have huge vatfuls of sourdough starter unless you are running some kind of micro bakery. You don't need tons of starter. So those smaller feedings allow you to use less flour, to make your starter stronger, to do multiple feedings. When my starter does not have any hooch on and it's very strong because I've been like replenishing it on a regular basis, I actually do a very simple 1-4-4 feeding on Sunday nights. So I would take out, depending on how much dough I wanted to make that week, I would take out 50 to maybe 100 grams of the starter, and then I would feed it 4 times that amount. So 50 grams of starter in a 1-4-4 ratio would be 50, 200, 200. And then the next morning, I have 450 really strong, healthy grams of starter, fed starter or leaven that I can mix up dough with. So I do those larger ratios of feeding when I want a larger amount and when I want the starter to rise for a very long amount of time. Because when you do that 1-4-4 feeding, it takes like 10 hours for that to hit its highest rise, because you just gave that 50 grams of starter so much food to eat through, and it's just going to take a while for it to work its way through all that flour. When you give 50 grams of starter, only 50 grams of flour, it eats through that 50 grams of flour faster. And so that's why those different ratios for feeding your starter are so helpful, because you can then be in control of how long your sourdough starter is going to rise, and also how much starter you're going to have. And there's some other videos about that on the channel, all about like how to figure out how much starter to feed, basically. Okay, I'm going to do one more question. And then we're going to sign off for this week. And if you are used to joining us on Tuesdays for our live, we're so, so glad. We love doing them. We are going to take a break the next 2 weeks. It's spring break for our family, and we're going to take a little break from doing the live videos and spend some time with our family. But just know we'll be back in April, and I'm going to get those live videos posted so that you can plan to join us in April after Easter. And the very first live that I'm going to do in April is, what do I do? And I see this question right here. It says, how do I work with the starter after months in the fridge and it's got kind of hard and thick, and instead of hooch, it's kind of hard. Okay, when I come back after our little spring break, we're going to pull that starter out of the fridge that has that hooch on it, and I'm going to show you exactly how I wake it up. the process of what I do to get it strong so that we can bake good bread. But just know your starter, Mark, your starter is not dead. I think it's Mark. It's not dead. It probably has dried out. So I would say for yours, put 10 grams of water in there and see if you can start to mix it up. You can actually bring it out of the fridge for this. Put some water in there, try to mix it up, let it rest for a little bit. If it's starting to soften, give that jar 15 grams of more water and 15 grams of flour, stir it up, let it rest for the day and see what it's doing. Then if it's softened, take out 10 grams of it and do some of those 1-to-1 feedings. Repeat it each day. Go watch the video and you'll be able to get it to wake up out of its dormant state in your fridge. It takes a lot of work to kill a sourdough starter. So just know you're not going to kill yours unless you left it on the counter and didn't feed it for a week or two. That is when you would probably want to throw it away, because when your sourdough starter lives out of the fridge in the nice warm environment of your kitchen and you aren't feeding it on a consistent basis, what happens is it actually starts to capture bad bacteria, and the bad bacteria overruns the wild yeast. So if you can't do anything with your starter right now, if it's freaking you out, put it in the fridge and come hang out with us on our sourdough channel. We're so glad that you're here. We have so much goodness in store for you. In April, we're going to do hamburger buns. I've also been working on a gluten-free bread, sourdough bread, and it's getting close. It's almost ready to share. We're going to be talking about how to wake up a starter that's dormant. You forgot about it or you think it's dead. We're going to talk about that and so much more. So thank you for hanging out with us, and we will chat with you all soon. If you're headed out on spring break, I hope that you have the best time, and just keep on baking. Keep baking. Don't give up on it. The more that you practice it, the better your bread is going to get. And what better invitation to your table than a delicious loaf of bread? So we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.